So the word cult, it's well, not that long ago, right? Cult, it comes from the Latin cultus, which is to nurture something, right? So the Roman historian Cicero talked about the cultus deorum, the cult of the gods, right? So if you're a good Roman pagan, you go to Zeus's temple and you cultivate Zeus, right? You make sure Zeus is a nice looking temple and has enough, sacrifice bulls to eat and stuff like that. So originally, cult just sort of meant any kind of organized ritual or worship. It wasn't necessarily a negative word. And sometimes Catholics will still talk about things like the cult of the saints, right? Which just means their kind of personal devotion to the saints. But around the 20th century, cult came to mean something different, which was something that looked like a religion but was bad, right? So we think of religion as always being something good. So if it's a religion that's doing something bad, then it starts to become a cult. And then we had this kind of series of moral panics over cults. And in the 70s, there was something called the Cult Wars. And so during the Cold War, we sent soldiers into Korea. They fought in the Korean War. Some of them were captured and sent to POW camps. And a handful of them said when the war was over, I don't want to go back. I like communism. I want to stay here in Korea and be a communist. This was a few people out of several thousand prisoners that were captured during the war. So the CIA, their explanation of this was they said, well, the Koreans have this secret power that's called brainwashing. So the CIA actually made up the term brainwashing and said that they have these basically mind control tactics that they do, and that's how they made these soldiers believe in communism. Well, so that idea gets out there, and it's sort of thought of something that communists and spies do. And then in the 60s, people start joining weird religions, right? The hippies start becoming, Hare Krishnas, and there's a group called the Moonies or the Unification Church. And people say, you know what? I think these groups are brainwashing people into joining them. So now brainwashing becomes something that cults do. And in the 60s and 70s, if you were a parent and your kid went to college and they joined a weird religion, you could hire a deprogrammer, and that person would go and kidnap your kid and like lock them up in a basement or something and say, I'm going to basically reverse brainwash them. So they might like tie up your kid and say, if you say Hare Krishna sucks, I will give you a candy bar, or I'll untie one of these straps or something like that. And eventually the courts came in and said, this is still actually kidnapping. You can't do that to people just because they joined a weird a religion. But some people said, this is wrong. All these claims of brainwashing, this is not scientific. The American Psychological Association said brainwashing, as described in these cases, is not a real thing. You can't mind control people like that. Um, and so the deprogramming was shut down, and they said this is, we're supposed to have religious freedom in this country. We can't say certain religions. You can kidnap them and try to, unbrainwash them in a basement. So a lot of is at stake about these terms cult and brainwashing. And now it's changed even more because it used to be a cult, you at least had to be a religion, right? But now people will say, well, multi-level marketing is a cult, right? Or fans of Taylor Swift are a cult, or the whole kind of transgender thing is a cult, or MAGA and Trump supporters are a cult. So we've reached a point where anything that we don't like is now a cult, and it's become an almost completely meaningless term, right? So my proposal on the word cult is we should just get rid of it. And if something is a religion and it's bad, just say it's a bad religion. And then I can ask you, oh, really, why do you think it's bad? And maybe you'll say, well, I think that they financially abuse people, or there are unfair practices used to kind of control their members. Or maybe you don't actually have a good reason, and maybe you just say, well, they don't believe what I believe, so I think that they're bad. And then brainwashing, I think that brainwashing doesn't work the way that a lot of people think that it does, right? So I have this book coming out called The Penguin Book of Cults. One of the documents in that is the so-called death tape. This is from Jim Jones and his group, the People's Temple. They went to Guyana and they drank. It actually wasn't Kool-Aid; it was Flavor Aid, but that was poisoned, and over 900 people died. But if you look at the tape and you look at what people were actually saying, there were lots of people saying, "Well, I don't want to drink poison. I want to live." and they're surrounded by people with guns. And Jim Jones has lied to them and said, the CIA is sending soldiers here to come kill us and torture your children immediately. This is your only way out. Well, having a guy stick a gun in your face and lying to you and trying to basically trick you into doing something, that is definitely manipulation. That's definitely coercion. That's definitely intimidation. But it's not brainwashing, right? It is an attempt to get someone to make a choice based on limited options and bad information. And I think very often when you look at these cult cases, what you see is not so much mind control, but things like coercion, blackmail, and sometimes people really genuinely come to believe in weird ideas. And we have to give people kind of freedom to make their own choices, or at least kind of respect the dignity of their choice. So there's a lot of reasons why it's appealing to say, oh gosh, my uncle would never really say those things at Thanksgiving. My uncle was brainwashed, right? Or whatever it is. Or my kid would never really join this weird religion. They were brainwashed. Unfortunately, I don't think that's the way it works. I think more often these people really do make these choices of their own free will.